Oh my God, we're live. Hi, Yash. Welcome to Here with Grace.
Hi, Grace. Thanks for having me here.
To start the show, I would love for the audience to get to know you a little bit more. Actually, your CEO was on our show, and then I saw him like 2 days ago, so it's like it was very fun, and it was so great to like run into you again after GTC at the Snowflake dinner. Maybe we could talk about like what were some like early career lessons that before starting your company. You spent like 8 years at Google, and then you have starting your career at JP Morgan. Maybe we could start with like, what were some core things that you learned at Google, and, how do you kind of like leverage that to like start your own company? You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Grace. So I think the my journey has been pretty interesting. After college, I signed up for an investment banking job, even though
Mhm.
I studied computer science. Finance always intrigued me. Growing up, and you know, I I really did that for a year. Worked on an M&A, a couple of LBOs and an IPO in a year, and then I think realized as I learned a lot from that. I think being one of the junior analysts at JP Morgan, I think they, especially in the investment banking side, they really teach you how to have a lot of attention to detail, right? Like you're putting a lot of a high value information in a way that can that can enable people to make big decisions. And that was actually very that was the first job out of college that was super exciting, but also I realized that I really love building and being creative, and so decided to go back to grad school, especially focus on machine learning. And after that, I joined this early team work that was working at Google, that was working on speech to text, and the erstwhile voice search, and Google 411, where they like Google had like a 1-800 number, 1-800 Google 411, and you can actually like talk to a bot to get search results, like people who couldn't type, who couldn't didn't have a smart device, or they could just call Google and and get information about the world.
Mhm.
And that was really cool. That this is the whole mission was to make technology accessible to to everyone in the world. And over the years there, like we've really built like the foundations of conversational AI, with the Google Assistant, and captions in YouTube, and the Google Home devices, and then even on the contact center technology that powers that powers a lot of contact centers today through Google Cloud. And so having worked on a large range of applications, and really supporting the and building out the core machine learning technology that powers all of like over 20 products at Google. We my team was really well poised to start working on these language models, and these like early versions um, of generative AI models. And one thing we realized is that this it was very hard to trust these models in production. And naturally speaking, right, like as a Google user, I wouldn't want to have Google send me one wrong answer out of the 10 questions I asked, and like I would stop trusting Google if that were the case. And so the big, I think, aha moment for us is like, and also having a decade worth of experience in productionizing conversational AI systems. The motivation was that as the language models, large language models, are going to change the world, but there's a big but to it, because that's it's so hard to productionize them as in especially in mission critical tasks, right? Like it is by now, we know one thing, that at least building a chatbot is not that hard with LLMs. But building an end-to-end automated agent on that makes changes to the real world systems, and actually does end-to-end automation, that's pretty risky, right? and it's not easy. So that's, that's where we've come, so so far, right from my first job to my experience, and um, we've been solving the problem of trust and reliability at Galileo.
Mhm. I have a question about the trust and reliability. So, like, I know that you guys monitor the performance of like different AI models, right? So, like, how do you monetize on that kind of stuff? And like, I know that like, since we met at like Snowflake, but like, I guess like, how do you think about like, from the client perspective, like, how does the money flow in the model industry?
Hmm. Well, that's a complex question, especially in the era of all these circular deals that OpenAI and the chip
Yeah, it's
makers
like
are
I
doing.
every day I'm looking at this, it's kind of like you gave money to me, I give money back to you.
Yeah,
And then it's kind of like, I don't know, it's very interesting generally.
yeah. Well, I think it's. I mean, there's a whole, like, there's a virtuous cycle obviously being created, but I mean, I think we work with a lot of enterprises that are building, you know, actual real world applications in
Mhm,
production. A lot of them are, yeah, are become starting to be user facing. The last couple of years, companies have started with just internal use cases and proving that out first before going external. But you know but we're actually seeing a lot of teams now being spun up
mhm,
to build external facing applications, process, like just in the banking sector, right? Like, just not just customer service or some internal productivity things or marketing, improvements, use cases, but you see um, agentic use cases being adopted by chat, like actual user facing, applications.
mhm,
um, the the whole like agents processing payments, like we see that being rolled out in POC now, but there are teams being spun up to build these things now. So from that perspective, we see that enterprises are convinced of the value that AI brings to the table, right? And they've well on their way to build out the key high ROI use cases needed.
mhm,
But and the key challenges there though are, how do we know the value that it can bring, we know the technology, we have the technology that we can build it with, but when things are um, when things are out there, like how do we enable trust and reliability is one of the challenges. And on top of that, there are some other infrastructure challenges which were, on multiple agents talking to each other, the
mhm,
security and authentication between agents. Um, and so that's being solved for today as we speak. So a year down the road, we'll definitely headed to a point where agents are being productionized for user facing tasks.
mhm. I wonder, so you guys have like Luna too.
Yeah.
So like can you talk about like, so like how is it, so like I saw all the benchmarks and stuff on the agentic power workflow page, and it's competing, or like not competing, but like you guys kind of like are in the same domain with like NVIDIA Nemo and Azure Content Safety. So like I guess like how do you think about like building in a space that where like big tech also are building, and then how do you think about like the differentiation and everything?
Well, I mean, I think, like, our Luna models today are the only models in the world that can actually solve, and this is a big claim, but one thing we can be proud of is that uh, we have built a model that can do evaluations at scale, um, and with a much better performance and a cost and latency uh, combination than any other model out there. um, we our Luna models have, like, they do one out of the box. The Luna model will be great at computing a single score for any kind of judge metric, than any other model, like even a GPT style model,
Mhm,
because these models are often, they'll generate hundreds of tokens and give you a lot of content,
mhm,
but they're slow, and they're costly, and they're not. and Luna is not only faster and cheaper, but also more accurate out of the box. And Luna is not like a golden pill, right? Like, just like any LLM, any LLM is, just because you call an LLM, it's not going to do your job for you. You have to build the agentic the agentic architecture around it and give it the right context. So even with Luna is a foundational building block for doing evaluations and guardrailing at scale. Um, and that's the core technology that we have, that we built, along with a lot of infrastructure around it to support it.
For sure. Can we talk about the on the sales side of things? Maybe we could start with like, I know that you guys, I think we have chatted about this with the CEO of your company as well, about like, you guys have landed Service Titan, HP, Comcast, and TT, a lot of different companies. What does the sales motion typically look like? So do you meet them at like a conference, or I know that you guys are very popular in like, hackathon, or like just like, we meet at the GTC happy hour you guys throw. Like maybe we could talk about like, how does developers develop, like kind of like discover this platform, and like do you think like how, I guess, how do you kind of like convert them into paid users, and how do you kind of like create stickiness as well?
Mm. So we have, as a company, we've been focused heavily on the enterprise, and solving a lot of enterprise problems. Like today, for right from the beginning, right? Like we focused on building infrastructure that just doesn't run in a library or a single Docker image, but can scale to a lot of different teams and solve a lot of hard problems. For example, how can we do like 10,000 QPS of ingestion? Like that's one of the load metrics, right? Like, but for developers to start using Galileo, our website, our product is completely free,
Mhm,
and there is the basically a lot of our the other solutions in this market, they start charging $10, $20, $30 for. But our platform, we've kept it free up until a very high limit for developers to experience it.
mhm,
And the reason why we've been enterprise first is so that we can actually solve a lot of the focus our time and energy on solving a lot of the hard scaling and accuracy challenges that enterprises need, right?
mhm,
I've always been a strong believer in developing technological solutions to hard problems over building tools. And don't get me wrong, like tools for developers are very, very important,
mhm,
but you'll start hitting a very big uh, bottleneck at some point, once you actually starting to do a lot of evaluations across multiple teams, across multiple agentic use cases. When things become more complex, those tools are not going to assist you in actually solving your measurement problems, your scaling problems.
I
So but to answer your question, Race, I think we we do write we do write and educate people about our. We're very open as a company. We've published our research. We're basically probably the only company in this space that has an ML research team, and that is actually doing a lot of research and sharing that across the board.
mhm,
Um, but also we publish a lot of ebooks and our content to educate a lot of developers. That's actually been very well received, and we
mhm,
do put in a lot of time and energy into educating and sharing the best practices that we've learned along the way.
mhm.
Uh, but we and the other places to engage are, of course, as you said, like hackathons and conferences, and enterprises know about Galileo. They know that this company is actually solving the problems we want to solve. Um, and and that's one way we actually start working with them.
For sure. Maybe we could talk about the role as a COO, right? So like I think like for CEO, a lot of it is like, landing like business deals and stuff like that. But like I guess like for COO, like how do you kind of like define your day to day at work?
Well, I mean, I think my title actually is a bit deceptive, right? Like I do work with a lot of our customers, But early on, like when we in the when we started the company, when Galileo was like we were 5 people, I spent a lot of time with our ML research team and our machine learning efforts. um, and naturally, I think I started working very closely with our customers,
Mhm.
because I I happen to be good at explaining the value of our tools, of our algorithms, of our metrics and our models to our customers the best.
Mhm.
So that being said, like I've also been super technically involved with our engineering teams, with our machine learning teams,
Mhm.
within Galileo. So my role is, as a founder, you have to wear multiple hats,
Mhm.
and actually, working closely with our engineering team actually keeps me really close to our product and our metal, and then I can work best with our customers as well.
For sure. Can you talk about like working with a customer, right? So like, are you in charge of like, customer acquisition, or is it more towards like customer success?
Well, like, so I'm responsible for the for making sure our customers,
Mhm.
firstly we win over these customers, and we get we can actually scale them.
Mhm.
So when uh, our marketing teams and our BDR teams actually do a lot of work on the lead generation side, and I tend to not Vikram, my co-founder and CEO, he looks into the lead generation side of things. But once we have customers doing POCs with us, and then also building out the scale up motion for them, for that, that's where I spend a lot of my time, while also working with our engineering and product teams, uh, to make sure we're building in the right direction, and innovating with them. It's a lot of fun. I don't get a lot of time to write code, but I do enjoy that technical innovation process quite a bit.
For sure. How do you like, I guess, like prioritize your work, or like what would be your KPI? Is that like tied to like revenue, or is it more towards like, we just need to make sure that like we're saving costs, or like we, show up at different places, like from a brand building angle? Like, how do you define your own KPI as a CEO?
I mean, I my day, one thing I've really loved about being a founder
Mhm.
from the beginning is that no single day is the same.
Mhm.
Like even 4.5 years down the line, like I can say the same thing, that every single day there is something that's
Mhm.
very different, and you're just doing so many different things. But I spend a lot of time deep in discussions, and almost like engineering solutions with my team, while also meeting our customers, and empowering our sales engineering and our field engineering organization to really serve our customers well.
Mhm.
um, in terms of KPI, yes, we are always looking towards, like, user adoption, growth, revenue growth. You build a great product, you listen to what our customers have. Like, customer obsession is our number one value. And that's, I mean, my mind, the KPI would be happy growing customers, as along with revenue, for sure. But that, I think that's a once you have happy growing customers, the revenue follows.
I wonder, maybe we could talk about like the growth side of the business. So, like, we chat about like, you guys started with an enterprise. How do you view the startup community? And like in terms of adoptions, because like I think you charge like based off, um, I guess usage. And how do you think about like, obviously big company have like bigger usage and the problem, but like I guess like, how do you think about expanding the customer base?
Yeah, I think you know from uh, from the beginning, right? Like, Grace, if you realize that we started 4.5 years ago
Mhm.
as a company, that was a year and a half before ChatGPT even existed, right? So the world didn't know about the technology, let alone the challenges they will face with the technology.
Mhm.
So while we invested a lot of time in iterating and laying the foundation of strong research in the company, um, we the problems we are solving for
Mhm.
uh, would be faced by enterprises first, but that's not true anymore, right? Like, I think every like that's building an AI use case is facing the same issues as enterprises. The risk appetite for startups is higher, but developers don't want their agents to hallucinate and screw up in production, right? Uh, that's universal. So yeah, even what I said was, like, we invested a lot of time building out enterprise grade technology and enterprise scale technology. Now even startups are working with us, and we have a whole developer of a focused motion to serve and work with startups. I strongly believe, when you were asking me where I spend a lot of my time, I spend a lot of my time with our startup customers, um, and to make, because they're oftentimes ahead in terms of the developing agentic use cases.
Mhm.
So and then I do make sure that what we build with startups is actually scales for enterprises.
How do you sell to like the CTOs, and then how do you make sure that, like, I mean, what does your own like tracking system kind of look like? Is it like, every day we talk to like 100 leads, and then like 50 of them book the next meeting, and then 30% of that is like turning into customer? Or and then in terms of like selling, like, I'm sure the buyers are probably like CTOs or like platform teams and stuff like that. So like, um what message you mentioned about, like, these like white paper and then the content basically that you guys put out that kind of attract people. Where do developers hunt out? Because, like, I mean, obviously hackathon's a big one, or like, some of these like major like engineering conferences. But in terms of like discoverability, and then also like the recurring revenue end, like, ideally the startup can keep growing into something bigger so you get more business. But like, before that happened, like, how do you think about like the client acquisition pricing versus like, the LTV and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were tons of questions in there, but I think what I start with, um, the so uh, for example, I think I'll start with the KPIs, the tracking bit that you're saying, right? Like, so yes, I mean, I think that typically, like, every business like has a funnel, has a lead generation funnel. Um, and we are monitoring that constantly to see, okay, where do we actually invest more of more of our efforts and resources to I mean, I think to really be out there to reach the people that we need to reach, right? So
Mhm.
um, so our marketing team is doing a phenomenal job at actually creating that awareness and the lead gen mechanism. It's always a work in progress, and something that you constantly keep refining and building. um, but that's been critical, right? Like, to every other founder that's actually starting out, like, I I would advise them to have like a marketing function sooner rather than they would think they need one. Um, but I think even open source in many ways is marketing, right? So you either invest in like open sourcing, and then hire more engineers to support the open source mechanism, which reaches developers first. Or if you want to sell to it, like, or build and sell for enterprises first, you need a marketing team early on. Then comes our like basically our ICP, and who we sell to. Yes, you're right that, like, yes, we sell to CTOs and CIOs in most cases. There's the AI platform teams, even the AI use case teams, um, that who are typically, nowadays everyone is aware about evals and doing high quality evals. And when like for and anyone who's doing evals, they know that when it comes to high quality evals and in getting your judges to the highest quality bar, and scaling that in production, Galileo has been the leader. We've published papers in this space. We launched new metrics every month or every quarter actually. Um, in uh, and our research team is really solving the problems for developers
Mhm,
to give them a very good set of metrics just to get started with.
mhm,
Secondly, so that's what that's these are the teams we sell to. And then in terms of the value creation and the LTV, right? Like I think uh, that's not like that's been organically transforming, right? Like I think initially when we started, our pricing model was more revolve around users and how many users will be on our platform.
mhm,
I mean, now it's more about the consumption, and the more we want to make sure that more and more developers can be on our platform, and as they develop more agents and grow and scale them, our that would grow our revenue as well.
mhm. I wonder, so when you're working backwards on like, you guys raised like 45 million Series B, and thinking about like, raising Series C, or like eventually, getting $100 million ARR, I guess like what kind of benchmark do you have to hit? And then like what would be your general like I guess like thought process on like achieving the next round?
Hmm. um
Yeah.
I mean, in many cases, right? Like I think if you want to raise our next round, we can even now. But the problem is, I mean, we've always been careful about just overvaluating our company in general. That's not good for anyone. You know, raising money at like billions of dollars of valuation,
Mhm,
where it becomes hard to, generate that sustained revenue
mhm,
uh, for your investors. It's bad for your team, your employees,
mhm,
so um but uh I think we and we have cash for the next, like 2 years or so. Like it's not, so we don't need more capital right now. That's how we think about it in terms of, like, revenue targets. Like that's you know typically, like, from your previous revenue, you typically grow like 3 to 4x of your last round revenue at least, before you think about raising. And that's how we think about it.
mhm. As for like the AI trends, maybe I want to like switch gear a little bit on like the AI trend side, because like obviously everybody is um leveraging models, but like I guess like maybe we could start with like what industry uses Galileo the most, and then maybe we could talk about like the AI trends in the developer space. What are some general trends that you're seeing in general in the AI space?
Yeah, good question. What industries? So yeah, I mean, I think where Galileo has been a pretty industry agnostic platform. But in terms of, yes, like, we see a huge demand from any sort of large enterprise business, more so even on the more regulated side. So, for example, in we are Galileo is, like, is becoming like almost like the de facto platform in the financial services for reliability. We work with a lot of the largest banks and financial institutions in the country, um, and on top of that, telco is the second highest. We've worked with three or four of the largest telecom companies in the world. um, then on the I mean, we also have customers across, like, consumer facing startups and fast growing startups as well, agentic startups that like we see this every month in the news, or maybe every week, that, like, some agentic startup, like, deleted their data, like their users databases. And this has been true for multiple folks. Or Taco Bell, like, turning off their voice agents because it started ordering 18,000 glasses of water. And you see all these bizarre things. And a lot of these are, like, are startups that are being vendors to enterprises. But now they also are feeling a lot of pressure to add reliability into their agents, otherwise enterprises are not going to adopt them.
Mhm. What are, I guess, like some trends that you're seeing in the space? So like in the
Yeah.
developer space, how is it different than like, last year? So like from my observations, like, back in time, like when it was like, I guess I call it like the ChatGPT era and then the lovable era. So like
Mhm.
nowadays, a lot of people started like building their own stuff. So like I wonder, what are some tools that you feel like maybe starting with your own engineering team, like what are stuff that people are actually using? And then the other part is like, where do you see, yeah, just like what are some general trends about like dev tool or infra
Yeah.
space that people are kind of like really passionate about?
And you're absolutely right. I think we went from, and we call it an era, but it was actually only a year. But
Mhm,
so that's important to note. But it's um in 23 it was like, it was all chatbots, and 24 was, was co-pilots, and it's like assistants that would help you generate stuff, right? And
mhm,
um 25 is all about agents, but it's all vendor based agents first, like voice agents and you know uh, pre-built agents. But what's where we are seeing already that shift happen is that enterprises are realizing that this vendor agent is not going to know. It's like hiring contractors versus full-time employees. you know
mhm,
you you know you're do you want to build a business by hiring 100% contractors? No way, right? You got to have some full-time employees. So
mhm,
in that sense, you got to build your own agents if you really want to generate that true ROI.
mhm,
Otherwise, you'll always be telling that contractor to learn your business as good as you do.
mhm,
So it's that's the shift we are seeing. I mean, it's not that, I don't see companies not purchasing tools like Copilot, Cursor, Replit, and this is for developers, right? Since you asked about developers and infra. um there will be many teams who don't want to develop an agent on their own, and maybe they want to just use Replit, or and then for websites like Lovable is awesome, right? Like, so that's, we see them, their business is growing up in revenue as well. But that the time is now where companies are saying, this is where I was alluding to, is like there are many teams popping up now that are in developing in-house, in-house agentic use cases.
mhm,
Because enterprises have seen the value in them.
mhm,
You've seen, like, the reason why people gravitated towards vendors and out of the box solutions, because it's easy to just try out and start using it, and you don't have to build and maintain and grow it, right?
mhm,
uh, but having seen the value from them, they're like, oh, I want to build something in house for this. Now I either go to an Accenture, or and any other SI, get that use case built out for me, but then I have to always rely on them to, like, completely, uh, update it, maintain it. Uh,
mhm.
but we're seeing a huge amount of interest for that too. But then, in-house development is happening. So there's been in an arc of adoption or growth, right? Like the first wave came in where, like, everyone was just creating chatbots. Now it's all vendors, but now the vendor, that technology has been proven. So now we are seeing increasing development in-house. Um,
I Yeah, you're saying people start building everything in house.
and not everything, a lot of it now, because people are like, a year ago we were having conversations with some CIOs that, like, should I even build, like, there are so many startups out there that are going to build so many things uh, that we need. Should we even build in house? But now today, that's not a question anymore. You got, like, just like you have software developers in a company, it's going to be necessary to have, like, agent builders in your company, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of those software developers are becoming agent builders.
Oh, okay. So I have a question for you. So for the agent builder, so like, I went to Dev Day and like
Mhm.
OpenAI Dev Day, and then there's, for Codex, there's like two, like you drag a field button and then the agents are working and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Um, is it really that easy? Because like whenever I try something, like even I use Lovable, I would literally be on ChatGPT for half an hour to crafting the best prompt to like, throw it in there.
Yeah.
And I wonder like how easy is it to like actually build an agent these days? And then like that's kind of like, enterprise grade, right? Like you don't want an agent that like, your sales teams are using it and then like people start selling like, stuff for $0.
Yeah, but you're talking about building agents that people sell, like that you would sell to a customer. There are going to be tons of agents within the organization doing some menial tasks as well,
Mhm,
right? um, so there's think of like just augmenting your workforce and everything you're doing, even uh, you know let's say if you had an agent to just describe, like summarize just things for you automatically, right? And then that's just someone has just built it. Your team member
mhm,
said, hey, Grace, we're doing all these tasks all the time. I'm just going to build an agent that will do this for us, going forward. Then you're like, oh, that's cool. I'm just going to take the output of the agent and get going. Those internal agents are going to be very easy to make from some of these platforms,
mhm,
right? But once these use cases become mission critical, whether it's in mission critical is like obviously it's on the sales side,
mhm,
that's revenue generating from the beginning. If you need to generate revenue from an agentic use case,
mhm,
you will obviously develop it in house, because then you'll have full control over it, not
mhm,
just slap in another like vendor agent and say, okay, I'm an AI company. No, right? Like that's um, and on the internal side as well, when you rely on agents for automation, for
mhm.
keeping your sales force up to date, making sure your support tickets in service now are filed properly. These are, if they go wrong, your entire business will be affected, right?
Yeah.
And so that those you cannot mess with. You have to get them absolutely accurate. So when people talk about the ROI in agents, and like recently the study from you know Professor Nanda's lab in MIT came out,
95% agent doesn't work basically.
and that's not new. Like we've been hearing about that. I think McKinsey published a similar thing a year ago. But I think the issue is that enterprises, to see the real ROI from these agents,
Mhm,
do need to build automation workflows with them, and they
mhm,
can only trust them if they have the strong controls around it.
mhm,
So that's one thing. And there's also uh, as I said, like infrastructure, since you asked about infrastructure directions and trends that we are seeing, right? Like
mhm,
in terms of how you know in terms of people developing these agentic use cases,
mhm,
there are still some unsolved infrastructure challenges, like agent authentication. How can agents process payments? How can
yeah.
agents talk to other agents reliably? So these are being solved right now, as I said earlier, right? So we have to. It's just a matter of a few months, and we'll have some standards, some infrastructure coming up from different companies.
Oh, this is exactly the trend I was thinking. Like, so, like, I met a founder at my own conference, who was like a director of big, I would say, e-commerce company, and then he started building, agent, payment processing. So it's kind of Stripe for agent. And then I look into that category on our list. We also have a company that does that, and then like. I went to the Madonna I-40 summit. Even yesterday, I spoke at the alumni ventures like panel. Like, um, I think one of the big trends like nowadays, like people are not really building for humans anymore. They're building for agents. So
Yeah.
like the tools are itself, it's like build agent first. And I guess like, do you agree with that approach? And then like, another part is like one of the panelists yesterday were saying that like Mahi from Hicksville, um, great company. They're like consumer, and then he was saying that like the next wave of AI is gonna come from consumer adoption, and obviously they're a consumer company, but like I guess like do you agree with that? Or I think like one of the opinion that he had, this is like me reframing it. I don't want to say something that like it was completely wrong. He didn't say that, but I think the from my where I thought he was getting is like he was saying that like a lot of the big tech company will be straight up replaced by a lot of these startups. Like, there's new technology that's like with a new kind of
Yeah.
like way to like distribution or like the product. It's like very different than like the last generation of product. So like a lot of the older stuff will be just straight up replaced. Though I personally felt like, the ChatGPT or like, the Microsoft of the world, they're like innovating very fast. So I guess like maybe we could talk about the adoption side of things. Like, do you feel like enterprise adopt first, or like you feel like customer adopt first? And maybe we start with the agent to agent situation.
Yeah, so the first question that you asked was about like the infrastructure and what the tooling layer, and what's like how are these being like these evolving, right? Um, Absolutely. I think like I've heard more folks talk about the ADLC, the agent development lifecycle and the tools involved.
ADLC.
Yeah, I mean it's just software is being replaced, like software is being agentified, right? So it's like agent development lifecycle instead of software SDLC, which is software development lifecycle, right? So now for agent development, it's a whole new playbook. Like you, of course, you're writing code, but you're writing non-deterministic code. You're writing code that has a bunch of new infrastructure components, like maybe an MCP server or your tool layer, different LLM proxies, and the context being passed in and fetched from different places, personalization, and you name it. Like I think the whole the agent planning and automation process, these are new paradigms of building software. So and absolutely, I think we're seeing that tools that don't evolve fast enough to be agent first are dying out very quickly, because developers see it immediately that, oh, I like even just between chatbots and agents, right? Like, oh, I like building a chatbot was so much simpler than an agent. And we see this live, right? In we, since we trace entire agentic graphs, our agent graphs are like typically having many like dozens and dozens of different steps, and the chatbot has just 3 steps.
Mhm.
So just in a year we've exponentially increased the complexity of these systems that are being built. And then that's not helping add trust to, because it's just the more complex the system, the harder it is to build trust in it.
Mhm.
So that's absolutely, the tooling layer has to evolve and is evolving, and those tools that are not evolving are being left behind. On the application layer though, whether agents will be adopted by consumers first or enterprises, um, I mean, I think it's too broad of a question, because it really depends on the criticality of it. Like, will you use an agent to diagnose your medical reports? Probably not, right? Like, it's sure, for a fun trick, like it's fine, because but then you'll always go back to your doctor and say, okay, oh, so for a second opinion, yes, that's possible. Will you rely on a travel agent to make all the reservations for your trip today? Not yet. It's not there yet. Um, so it's like, will you rely on an agent to do all the shopping for you? There are some, there's some uh, there's some businesses who are just creating these like assistants or designers, and they'll shop for you and send you stuff.
Mhm.
Um, so it's really like, I as I see the use cases, they're very cool. um um and but there are actual, like, actual a high ROI cases as well. Like, I would absolutely use an agent to write a social post on LinkedIn. Not that I do it, but I know a lot of people who do it.
Mhm.
I'm not I'm usually just super busy. I try to be active on LinkedIn, but I'm not as active as you. So
God,
no, but I mean, I think,
it's a nightmare for everybody else who read my content because it's like overload every day.
no, but I think it's like I would love to, right? Like, it's great to share the learnings from different people, like, and I appreciate being here today to share my story. But I think it's, these, in my Gmail, for example, had this like auto generated text. Like with Gemini, I can generate an automatic response, which is pretty good. I can just edit it. So it's, for small tasks to add to
Mhm.
productivity, even on the consumer side. If I want to do some research, and this is like OpenAI's classic example for their responses API, right? Like that, I just tell it to do some research, come back to me after some time. That's
Mhm.
great, right? But is that going to generate a lot of revenue? Are people going to pay so much for it? I don't know yet. Trends, on the other hand, can really tie the automation to a bottom line number, right?
Mhm.
So now they know that, okay, if I automate this, I'm going to save $100 million a year, and then I can invest at least 10 to 15 million dollars in this technology. Or
Mhm.
even if it's the other way around, like if, let's say, it's going to save me 10 to 15 million dollars a year, and
Mhm.
I need to invest $100 million, maybe I can use this in other parts of my businesses, and year over year I make the investment now, but I'll see improvements in year 5.
Mhm.
Like, so, that's how enterprises think, and like the investments being made are real. So that's why I wasn't 100% sure, will it be consumer or enterprise. um cons- at least the critical pieces of automation will first happen in enterprise, because it's a very very controlled environment,
Mhm.
whereas a lot of these agentic use cases on the consumer side, before they can really do monetary transactions, and make reservations to your tickets, they will be continue being assistive in nature.
For sure. I was wondering, what are something that you feel like VCs are investing that you feel like that should not exist, and then what are something that you feel like you wish more people kind of invest in that?
um hmm Good question. I think
We don't have to name specific company for the first
yeah, yeah,
category.
absolutely. I'm just thinking of like just technological trends, and what I think what I've seen. So uh hmm I think so. There's a lot of potential, of course, in like we've seen the biggest investment has happened in model providers,
Mhm.
in folks who have been making models more accessible, more accurate, reducing the cost. So
Mhm.
that's the foundational technology layer, right? And I think um, along with that, there will be like a lot of the tooling and infrastructure layer, like Galileo itself, which is going to be critical to invest in, and that's valid. Like there are many companies in this space now.
Mhm.
um, on the application layer, though, like that's where sometimes I'm really confused about, like, do we need another company to do X, Y, and Z? I will not name specific uh, companies, but you know there will be at least 10,000 companies that have been started like that are doing like an agent for X or AI powered X, Y, and Z, right? Like they're we're trying to rebuild some of the application layers workflows, and some of these will be great, but a lot of them can be, or as vibe coding becomes better and better, can be like quote unquote vibe coded, right? Like, and so one of my main things, as as and when I even advise founders, is like what's your moat? Like, is the
Mhm.
workflow your moat? Because the workflow can be copied, the workflow can be created easily, and with better systems, with better models, it'll even be easier to do that.
Mhm.
So that worries me a little bit. Like there's a lot of investment on the application layer, which where a lot of it will be wiped out. And on the infrastructure side, I
Mhm.
do feel like there is a lot more we need to invest in. As I said, right, like I think even from the trust and reliability layer, we have seen the need for controls being in place for agents. I just don't see why more people are not doing that. Like we're building the tooling layer, but not solving the technological challenges under the hood.
Mhm.
Even observability, I'll give you one example. um, just observing one agent that is getting query per second of traffic with five metrics, okay, can cost upwards of $10,000 a day
Mm,
using a small model like a Gemini 2.5 Flash or a GPT-5 Mini, right? Um, how are we able to evaluate and observe all our agents in production if the evaluations costs are so high?
mhm,
Nobody's thinking about it, like, apart from us and one or two other people, folks in the industry. But when I go and talk to customers and teams that are building this seriously, they are sampling their traffic in production and not even evaluating everything that they are sending to customers.
mhm,
Means a lot of these players have big blind spots in production. You
mhm,
cannot have blind spots in production with these non-deterministic systems, because they may cause something and you may never find out that this bad thing happened. So
mhm.
you know that's we need a lot more investment there.
Mm. I'm just taking notes. I was like, actually, I pull out this. I don't know if you guys belong to this graph, but since you mentioned observability, I was like looking at this graph. This is like actually wrote by one of our
Mm.
guests on the pod. Um, can you tell me, like, how many of these companies are going to be like gone next year, and what do you think is like kind of missing? This is like a graph from 2024.
Yeah, yeah, I think a lot of these uh, so yeah, this is just observability market landscape, which is interesting. um
Also, how big is observability anyway? So
So,
I'm just,
I think 90% of these players are either traditional application monitoring companies, like
yeah.
Pendo and LogRocket and Amplitude. They're the UI observability layer, right? Like, and so think of this as like just software. 90% of these logos here are pure software, not even AI. Like, they're software observability, and you need observability at different layers, in your browser, in your mobile app, in your application, in your backend, in your servers, on and in your CI/CD. So you need to make sure that your system is robust. Now think of this as like, for traditional software, there's already this so much investment being made on observability itself. Now,
mhm,
with agents and with AI, that observability is changing, and a lot of these players, in some of them in here, are have pivoted to doing. I only see uh Langchain, for example, as like an AI native company. A lot of the other players were doing traditional ML monitoring that pivoted into observability now. So they're also doing agent observability. But most of these companies, and I can't speak to a lot of the traditional software observability companies. I have used many of them, but not all of them. But in the AI space here, pretty much all of the logos in here are not solving the scaling problems. They're the tooling layer. So
mhm.
they are enabling developers to do have observability and do evaluations. But now, the how much it costs is up to you. Like, how accurate are the metrics? Your problem, not my problem.
I want to pull out another graph. This is by you guys.
Yeah.
So can we talk about like the eval space? Like what is it? So like there's development testing and then production development. I like Andrew in a company in the entire like I guess like eval or like agent testing space. But I also saw there's like 400 competitors like, in
Mhm.
the AI agent testing space. Like um what do you guys think about like maybe if you could explain this graph to the audience and then like maybe we could talk about like, where do you feel like Galileo, obviously you guys are like, doing the general like agent evaluations, but I guess like what is like the most challenging part on this thing, and then what should people actually pay attention to? um
Yeah, so I think I'll just there are two most challenging parts here. One is on the development side. I just had a couple, like, a meeting with a very large technology company, and it's surprising that, like, in that technology company, a lot of a lot of AI teams, a lot of agent teams are saying we don't need evals, right?
Mhm.
And they're applying humans to do the like the YB, they call it the YB eval, right?
Mhm.
Now, we can't be building mission critical, and this is also the difference between consumer, by the way, right? Like, if you're just building an assistant of sorts, vibes maybe okay, maybe your users will be tolerant enough now that they'll be okay with seeing a one-off issue.
Mhm.
But for agents, right, like, I think that's, and the reason why they called us is like, we want to change the culture, because as we develop automation and agents, evaluation has been should be the first thing you do, and then
Mhm.
eval has to power observability and runtime controls.
Mhm.
So, on the development side of things, one big challenge is, how do you easily measure your agentic applications?
Mhm.
Like, are the tools and that you're using helping you make it easy to measure the right things for your agents?
Mhm.
Once you can define or the expectation of your agent into a metric,
Mhm.
that solves half the problem, and into a metric that is accurate. Okay,
Mhm.
that solves half the problem. Second is, challenge that I talked about is scaling these measurements in production.
Mhm.
Scaling has a few different aspects to it. One is the most obvious thing is, how do I run it on a million traces, and be able to afford to do that, right?
Mhm.
Or even be able to do it fast enough in some cases, um, so that we get alerted in time. So that's the load based scaling.
Mhm.
There's also the applicability of the metric scaling to many different use cases.
Mhm.
I create an LLM as a judge to detect hallucinations in my chatbot. Can I apply that same metric to my agents?
Mhm.
Very likely not, because, like, tools are like, even tool selection can have hallucinations, but that other metric was just detecting a chatbot style hallucination.
Mhm.
So, and if you do apply that metric to agents and tool calls, you'll see that it only works about 60 to 70% of the time,
Mhm.
which doesn't cut it. So it defeats the whole purpose of observability.
Mhm. Um, I have a question. So I know that like another this maybe is very okay, so I also want to be mindful of the time.
Yeah.
So okay, maybe we'll wrap with like a quick 1 minute fire round. Okay,
Hmm?
what's your favorite book?
Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand.
Who made the biggest impact in your career?
Um, Great question. I think, I mean, I would say my wife has made the biggest impact in my career. Without her, I couldn't do what I'm doing today.
I hope she's listening. Uh, who would you invite to your dinner party?
Who would I invite to a dinner party? Well, definitely you, Grace, and a bunch of other founders in the valley as well. It's always a very stimulating dinner conversation to have, folks in here, almost like innovating at different levers to actually come and brainstorm
Mhm.
together over dinner. It's always illuminating for me.
Love that. Where can we find you outside work?
It, at home playing with my 4-year-old son, um, or going on a long nice drive.
Love that. Well, Yash, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was such a very informative conversation about the trust layer of AI.
Yeah, I do hope, as collectively as a community, we really double down on solving these challenges. As if we solve the trust and reliability problem with agents, we
Mhm.
all will benefit as an industry, and really see the ROI from agents that we are building.
Love that. Okay, on that note, let me quickly end stream and then